China has called for a reform of the current global currency system, which now relies on the US dollar for international payments. Officials from the International Monetary Fund and the developing countries have welcomed the suggestion. Yuan Xiaoyuan takes a closer look into the question of a new currency that's creating quite a stir.
As many world economies are seeking to walk out of the trap caused by a decades-old global currency system, China is urging for change. The governor of China's central bank, Zhou Xiaochuan, started the campaign on Monday by proposing a new global currency without sovereignty in an essay that appeared on the internet. He said the desirable goal is to create an international reserve currency that is disconnected from individual nations and is able to remain stable in the long run. He added that the financial crisis is a testimony to the inherent deficiencies of the current monetary system of the world, and he also said a new currency would allow government to manage their economies more efficiently. Zhou admitted the creation of a new reserve currency is a long-term goal. He suggests in the short term the new currency can be applied based on the shares in the IMF held by its 185 member nations, also known as special drawing rights. On Friday, Chinese Vice Premier Wang Qishan wrote a column in The Times urging reform in global financial regulations that would allow developing countries to have more say. He suggested that the upcoming London summit should set a clear goal of reforming the current international financial system. He called for readjusting the governance of international financial institutions and increasing the representation and voices of developing countries. Finance Minister Xie Zhiren also urged for a full-scale reform of global financial system to diversify international currencies and improve regulations. He called for effective measures to diversify the international currency system and coordinate different countries' monetary policies. This is in a bid to keep exchange rates of major currencies stable. China's calls to reform global financial and currency system were heard by IMF leaders. IMF President Dominique Strauss-Kahn said China's suggestion for a new reserve currency is reasonable, and the financial crisis has stimulated people's interest in this topic. But he did not agree that the US dollar has lost its leading role in the global economy. Meanwhile, an advisory body for financial and economic reforms under the United Nations urged world leaders to give urgent attention to create a new global reserve system to replace the current system on US dollars. The advisory body said the current system has led to trade imbalance, and US mounting debt has broken market confidence and stability. China's suggestion is also echoed by some developing countries. Brazilian President Luiz Lula da Silva said the discussion to reform world currency is acceptable, adding that all new emerging market economies should agree to set up a new global reserve currency.
Now, on Monday earlier this week, the head of China's central bank called for the introduction of a new international reserve system to replace the US dollar. Now, Zhou Xiaochuan's recommendation stirred up a great deal of talk and attention in international financial circles. An advisory body for financial and economic reforms under the United Nations said world leaders should give urgent attention to reaching consensus on creating a new global reserve system. Our Nobel Prize-winning U.S. economist Joseph Stiglitz, who chairs the UN Advisory Committee, said reform of the global reserve system, that is long overdue. Russia waded into the debate by proposing a conference of government representatives aimed at drafting international agreements on a new global monetary and financial architecture. Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Denisov said the current situation requires new collective solutions agreed at the international level. And the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, that's Dominique Strauss-Kahn, said the dollar is not under threat. But he added he also understands why China should question the future status of the American currency. Now, as world economies continue to struggle to stave off the worst of the financial crisis, calls to reform the International Monetary Fund are picking up momentum. As we just saw in the preceding report, China has called for the creation of a new currency to eventually replace the US dollar as the global benchmark. Now, earlier, Biz China spoke to Professor Nairi Woods from the University of Oxford. She said she did not think the position of the US dollar as a world reserve currency would change in the short term.
The dollar has a very special position in the global economy. It is the reserve asset, and it's the currency in which most countries hold their reserves. And I don't see that changing very quickly. One of the reasons it's not changing very quickly is that no other country or region is very willing for their currency to become the reserve currency. After all, it's quite a delicate balance. For the United States, being the reserve currency now means, on the one hand, they have to keep the dollar strong because they rely on foreign demand for the dollar. And on the other hand, a strong dollar goes against their exporting performance. So in today's world, it's quite hard being a reserve currency, and I don't think either China or Europe particularly want to have that position.
Now, Professor Woods also says China is expected to play a central role in reforming the global monetary system. She is suggesting that the country takes advantage of its healthy reserves to ask for a greater say for more countries in international organizations such as the International Monetary Fund.
I think China has an absolutely central role to play in rebuilding and reshaping the International Monetary Fund and the other international organizations. Wen Xiaobao and the Chinese leadership have taken what I think is a very good position and said that these institutions have to be more representative, not just of China, but of developing countries. And what the institutions need most immediately is more resources, and the one country best positioned to provide some of those resources is China. So China is in a very powerful position, and using that position to argue for an institution that's more representative of all other countries in the system, I think is an excellent strategy.
That was Professor Nairi Woods from the University of Oxford taking on the topic of the day, or rather topic of the decade, reform for the world's financial system. You're watching Biz China here on CCTV International. More ahead on our program.
From April 1st through 3rd, world leaders from G20 countries, representing 85% of the world's output, will meet in London to discuss stability, growth, and jobs. For all the analysis and answers, join our distinguished guests and our reporters in London as Biz China brings you the latest on-the-spot G20 news from London, only on Biz China.